Okay, that's the button for the video. This is the beginning, kind of. Hello, everybody. And then there's a theme song for the show that goes a little something like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Lateral Show. Fasten your seatbelts, because here we go.
What is up, everybody? It's another episode of the Lateral Show, a sideways look at fantasy football and the best fantasy football podcast without a check mark. My name is Herms. You can follow me on Twitter at Herms NFL. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend McLateral. What is up, my dude?
Yeets and greets, people, seasons yeetings, and the ad dollars are getting yeeted out of Twitter. So, I mean, like, if it's not good enough for the people that make the Oreo cookies, I'm certainly not giving Elon my money. That's for sure.
It's a bad sign.
It's a really bad sign if you can't get Mondelez's, like, advertising money. Like, I'm pretty sure that they use, and, like, you know, allegedly, let's sprinkle that in there. Rest in peace, Jesus and Moreau. Miss them. Little use of that allegedly, but I think they allegedly like use child labor to make the chocolate. Like these are not like bashed. It's like kind of a thing in that industry. That's why like Tony's Chocolonely exists, because it's like purported to be made entirely without like child or slave labor or anything like that. Because it occurs in like all these third world nations in these remote areas. It's tough to monitor everything. I mean, it's the same thing with like diamonds. You know, why like having certified non-blood diamonds exists.
Yeah.
You know? Little peek behind the world of how chocolate gets made.
All right.
Enjoy. But yeah, again, not bastions of like the moral high ground. Same with like Eli Lilly. Like they pulled their advertising dollars, and we all know why that happened. It was glorious.
Yes, definitely. That was a fun time. I thoroughly enjoyed that one. And I am happy to report that this week's episode on the Week 11 Sunday Storylines
is brought to you by Eli Lilly.
Yeah, no. Thank God, no. But yeah, no child labor has gone into the making of this podcast.
Oh, no, they're the ones that price gouge on insulin.
Ah, yes, there we go.
Yeah.
Another thing the Lateral Show does not do. Fortunately, but yeah, no, we got some fun topics to discuss with everybody this week, including what the fuck Raiders, what's going on? We more than that, obviously, but that's just one thing. Just wanted to tease something so that
I
way.
believe the quote in the show sheet is "Holy crap, the Las Vegas Raiders are bad."
It's not great, man. It's really not great, and there are some really weird things about all of that. You know, we've got some fun stats pulled up for, but you know, before we even get to any of that. Before we even dive into all the other fun shit that we have to talk about on the show, I'm going to hop on my soapbox real quick. Victory lapping injuries is the dumbest fucking thing in the world. It is like, honestly, insufferable behavior. Like, I people who spend too much time on Twitter like I do know what I'm talking about, so like I'm not going to give that person any more credit than just alluding to it. But like, okay, what crystal ball are you working with to be able to know, like, see, that guy did almost break his ankle. Ha ha! Like, shut up. Just stop. Like, it not only is it dumb, but it's in, like, really poor taste, because it's like, look, like, this is a very brutal and violent sport that we talk about. Like, this is, like, what this dude does, you know, for, like,
not to mention an injury isn't a bust, and I think it's like that is like an actual important point.
Yeah,
an injury isn't a bust, and so to call the guy that's being projected as the wide receiver 1 a bust because he finished checks notes wide receiver 4 before he went out with an injury. Like, he's been over the past 10 weeks, including a game where he got injured and a bye week, the wide receiver 4 in PPR scoring. He's wide receiver 3 in points per game. Like, the guy's not a bust. Yeah, he's just not.
Yeah, so congratulations on such an expert call on that one, doofus. Like, it's just, I swear to God, there are a handful of things about the fantasy space that bother me, and that's definitely one of them.
I will take this moment to do a little bit of victory lap, though. I
right.
definitely talked about taking Justin Jefferson and Stephon Diggs right at that one turn, like pairing those guys up. Currently the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in terms of points per game in PPR. So I am going to victory lap that a little.
Yeah, and look, and part of your reasoning had nothing to do with a freak injury that would occur in double-digit weeks. So, because of that, you get to be able to take those types of laps. If you want to victory lap something, make sure the reasoning behind it is something valid, okay? Like, God, whatever, that's my thing. I don't know. It bothered me, and that's the purpose of this portion of the program. So now I'm done with my thing. If you have a thing that you would like to, share and talk about, go ahead on your soapbox.
So I do have a thing, actually. So we use Twitter, for some fan interaction, as it were, giving some advice, looking up some stuff. And so we also chat through Twitter. So before we hop on the show, I log on to my Twitter account and pull up the messages, click the link you sent. And today, when I was doing that, I noticed what's happening, there's some stuff trending in the US. And one of them is hashtag RIP Jimmy Fallon, which I think is the best thing that has happened on Twitter in my time on Twitter. Like, especially like hashtag rest in peace, Jimmy Fallon. My heart is broken. Photo of Ellen DeGeneres. Gone but not forgotten. Hashtag rest in peace, Jimmy Fallon. Photo of Jimmy. It's just fantastic. And then like Jimmy Fallon is like, Elon, can you fix this? Hashtag rest in peace, Jimmy Fallon. And I'm just like, whoever started this, just bravo. Honestly, bravo. Well done.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I clicked on it because I was like, I feel like I would have heard about this if he had like really passed away or something. And then I just but to your point, just like random images of just like the weirdest shit. It's like, I was like, all right, internet, you're doing your thing. This is the version of the internet that I actually appreciate, because for all the bad things that the internet creates, we do have occasional victories of just absolutely meaningless dumb shit like that.
And it's just so many people. It's like there's literally 12.4 thousand tweets. I just thank you all.
We needed that in these trying times. These are the things that we really needed. Yeah. So
okay.
Shout out.
That's it.
Shout out Twitter for doing the thing. For once. So before we get into our new storylines that we have to present to you all this week, we have to review everything that we talked about last week. Now, there's going to be some rollover, as there is sometimes between last week and this week. But, before we even get into any of that, I already said we have to go over it. I'm doing this really well. You are the fastest man in 1 minute descriptions of fantasy football, whatever. Go over what we talked about.
Fastest man in 1 minute. I guess you could travel the most distance, and therefore you'd be the fastest man in 1 minute because you went the most distance in 1 minute. But it is the fastest minute in fantasy football, and honestly,
thank you. Okay.
Last week was like a little esoteric. We talked about like some fantasy football prep talk, playoff prep talk, and evaluating injuries. So there isn't a ton to go over this week. So I think we'll definitely hit that minute mark in 2-1. Okay, so last week we talked about 2 stories. Herms talked about fantasy football playoff prep talk, just some general notes, touching on some waiver stuff, but also some DSTs to snag. Matchups can make or break you in the playoffs, so make sure that you are looking at what defenses are on waivers, checking their matchups, and then maybe stashing 1 or 2 so that you can get that playoff win. Meanwhile, I talked about how we need to evaluate injuries. We covered Achilles, ACL, ankle, foot, and turf toe injuries. Feels a bit relevant given that Cooper Kupp is now going on IR with a high ankle sprain, which has a 4 to 6 week recovery time, as we covered. So just keep an eye out on that, because even if he comes off IR, he may not be 100%. And that's it. That only took 43 seconds.
Yeah, well, there it is, the fastest minute in fantasy sports podcasting. So, I think that definitely warrants getting yourself a little bit of an air horn for that effort. Yeah, there you go. You know. And then oh no, it's on a loop. Oh no, oh no, I messed up the effects of the show. Not only can I not introduce the segment properly,
You gotta go on mute.
oh no. Oh my god. I am so sorry, listeners and viewers. Oh jeez.
Are you kidding? This is the best thing we've ever done.
Yeah. Oh man, this is clearly my fault. Who gave me a podcast? Who decided that this was a good idea? Why do I have a platform? Okay, all right. Anyways, so we're gonna talk about some stuff that happened, and we're gonna talk about stuff that might happen. One of the other things we did go over a little bit last week that does kind of tie into my big topic for this week was, we kind of clowned the whole Colts going with Jeff Saturday thing, and we were kind of, skeptical about that. We briefly talked we were already kind of nervous about Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, and all those guys anyway. But then, surprise, Matt Ryan starts at quarterback again. They play against the Las Vegas Raiders. And they win, and they beat the. So, obviously, the Raiders have been a nightmare. They have lost so many, fairly close games, blown, I think, 3 separate 17-point leads this season.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just what the hell is going on? So, I decided to look, really evaluate some numbers, and just be like, okay, well, are they really that bad? So, shout out Pro Football Reference and Football Outsiders for these stats. So, in terms of scoring offense in the NFL, just for the points per game, the average this year, 21.9. Okay, so 21.9 points per game. That's, when you're just, straight up right there in the middle. The Raiders sit at 22.6 as far as that goes. So as far as scoring on a weekly basis, they're about in line with where you kind of want to be. And then their turnover percentage, moreover, is actually pretty good. It's the
They really don't turn the ball over.
Yeah, it's the 6th lowest at 8.1%. And as far as Football Outsiders offensive DVOA, they are at positive 0.1%, basically performing as they kind of expected they would for the most part. The only thing where it's really kind of, wonky, I would say, is they have the 11th lowest third down percentage right there at 38%. So they're not converting a lot on third down, but in all those other measures we were kind of talking about, they're scoring about where you'd kind of want to. They're not really giving the ball over, turning the ball over away very much. And they don't rank that lowly. So the 11th fewest total yards on offense. But if you're also holding on to the ball, long enough and not giving it away to the other team, it just indicates this is very much just Josh McDaniels' fault. It's now some injuries to Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow throughout the year have not helped. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just going to say it's all, but if everything else is kind of working, but
that's the thing, everything else is kind of working. Devontae Adams is getting the ball a ton. Foster Moreau, who we will talk about a little bit later in this show, is doing fine as a replacement for Darren Waller. Matt Collins is doing fine as a replacement for Hunter Renfrow. Josh Jacobs has been one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah. It's just for context about, and it's one of the tricky things where it's just bad offense does not necessarily mean no fantasy success or whatever. Also, we kind of just outlined that it wasn't a bad offense, but whatever. Devontae Adams, wide receiver 5 overall in PPR right now. To your point, Josh Jacobs being super good, RB6 out here in these streets doing his thing. Now, I mean, Derek Carr is kind of having a down fantasy year. I mean, averaging 14.9, points per game. It's a little bit low, lower compared to what he had been doing. But damn, they're weird. For being as on par with average as you want to be for an NFL offense, the fact that they're currently projected to have the 2nd pick in the NFL draft, it just blows my mind. So like assigning blame is really the thing I kind of want to explore.
Yeah, so I think I've got it, and you touched on it a little.
Mhm.
So the offense is actually pretty solid. And if you look at the expected points on Pro Football Reference, I didn't add it all up myself, but I got to tell you, I bet it's a positive number. Like they had multiple double-digit offensive expected points, and like their worst negative total was negative 8.49. So the offense is okay, but there are a couple issues. Their third down conversion rate, as you mentioned, is bad. It's only 38%. The red zone conversion isn't amazing. It's 51.9%. They've had 27 red zone attempts, and 14 of them have been touchdowns. But I think we need to address the fact that the defense is actually pretty awful.
Ooh, yeah.
So the defense has had negative expected points according to Pro Football Reference in all but one of their games, which was against the Denver Broncos, where they actually added 6.65 points. Against the Houston Texans, by the way, in a win, still negative 5.28 expected points. So we add all of that up, and it equals a terrible, terrible team. So I'm going to turn it over to you real quick, because what Pro Football Reference has is a ton of ads, and they've all gone
Oh,
here. Okay, that was apparently just enough vamping to get through of it. I kid you not, I had 3 banner ads running at once.
wow. That's okay. All right, keep going.
Yeah.
You got this.
Okay, so the things. So again, bad expected points totals, but they also don't stop the other team. So third down conversion, we're talking about how bad the Raiders' third down conversion is. Their opponent converts 48.7% of the times. It's a 10 percentage point swing.
Jeez.
And then you get into red zone, and this is where it really matters. The red zone percentage, 29 attempts for opponents against the Raiders defense. 21 of those have been touchdowns. The opponents have a 72.4 red zone percentage. Like, it's bad. It's actually really bad. In terms of red zone percentage, their league rank on defense is 32nd, and their league rank on third down percentage is 30th. Weirdly, kind of okay on fourth down. They're 10th in the league, and they've stopped more than half of the fourth down conversion attempts. However, there's only been 12 attempts on fourth down. So it's not like there's a huge sample size to go off of. But yeah, it really comes down to they don't stop third downs, and they really don't stop red zone drives. Like, they just don't. And so I think this defense is crushing this team, and the buck with that ultimately stops at Josh McDaniels. It does.
Yeah, and also to kind of close the loop on something you brought up, because I'm looking at the offensive stats, and I sorted by the category you were talking about, the expected points contribution on that side, the 13th highest
It's
in
really
expectation.
Not bad.
So
it's
like
really not bad.
And like so I've been thinking about a lot of this, and just in talking in like other group chats with other people in the industry and stuff, like it's amazing to me how much better this team did last year after the special teams coordinator took over amid controversies of John Gruden being a racist and Henry Ruggs, DUI that, really, cast shadows over everything. And it's like, and I understand that like the defense was a lot more stout last year at that time too, but like how you do this much worse than you did last year with a guy that, like, no offense to, I can't even remember his name, so like really no offense to that guy.
It's Rick or Rich. I want to say Bielsa it's something on those lines.
Yeah, he's with the Green Bay Packers now. Like whatever, like that guy, like
Rich Bisaccia.
Yes, okay, there you go. So it's like you did better last year with Bisaccia, like in the after, and like look, like John Gruden.
By the way,
they
did better with John Gruden. John Gruden was 3-2.
Yeah, so there you go. Like, and people have been really quick to point out, it's just like, well, Gruden and Mayock, like the restocking, effort that they did when they took over. A lot of these first round picks have ended up being waived from the team, or whatever. The lone example of one ending up in jail, but that's its own issue. But like, like I get that you can, point to that and have like that's a huge reason why. But like even with talking about everything that we talked about, that is not necessarily on the offensive side of the ball and all that stuff. Like you said, like the buck stops with the guy that you brought in to like really, turn this thing around. And like I don't know what they're gonna do with Josh McDaniels. Like I don't know, because like Mark Davis, early in the week, came out with some comments and was talking, just about like, no, it's it's like he's in first year or whatever, blah blah blah. Like it'll be fine, like. I guess it's good to have that kind of endorsement from your team owner in that regard if you're performing that poorly. But I'm just like, God damn, like I remember when this AFC West was supposed to be fun for us, folks. Remember when that was supposed to be a thing? Remember when this whole division was supposed to be, just barn burner after barn burner, and how the Raiders were going to be sneaky good, maybe, and the Denver Broncos were going to, let's ride their way, with Russell Wilson and all this. And just like, that has been a massive letdown of the 2022 season. Like, I can't stop thinking about how not even just the Raiders specifically, but just that division as a whole has really let us down in so many ways.
Yeah. So again, like I think with the Raiders, it's weirdly easy to see. So the team had not been managed well going into the season. McDaniels hasn't historically been a great head coach. I don't think he makes the team any better than its expectations. So I think Rich Bisaccia actually weirdly made that team outperform its expectations. And so there's this theory, at least in soccer, but I'm pretty sure it exists within most sports, called in soccer, it'd be the new manager bounce, and other sports, new coach bounce. Basically, as soon as you fire the guy who's been toxic in the locker room, whoever you bring in is going to like, let's win one for the gaffer. Like, let's get in there. Let's do the thing. And so I think like the rest of the Raiders season was kind of like that. Those players wanted to play for him. And I think they felt like a little maligned by the fact that they hadn't done anything wrong. Like Derek Carr hadn't done anything wrong. Those guys hadn't done anything wrong. Their coach was just a piece of crap. But unfortunately, you have to sometimes suffer the consequences when your boss is a piece of crap. Like that is how the real world, in fact, works.
True.
So then we look at this year's Raiders team, and they brought in a guy who's been a historically bad defensive coordinator. I mean, he's been a defensive coordinator with Miami in 2019, the Giants the past 2 years. They were okay in 2020, but aside from that, like over 4 years, it looks like his teams have on average been like the worst in terms of like one of the worst in terms of like yards and points allowed. So I'm not expecting like amazing things from that team.
Yeah.
I mean, Belichick had him for years as a positions coach, but never even thought of like promoting him, it seems.
Jeez.
So there's that. And then I think, when you look at, so you got McDaniels, who's already a little inexperienced when it comes to being a head coach.
True. Yeah.
Not particularly good at it, even in the experience he has. Their offensive coordinator's literally never been an offensive coordinator before. Ever.
Yeah.
And then, and before that, he was the wide receivers coach for the Patriots. Like, not the position group I think of as being amazing.
No, not at all.
You think of the Patriots. So they've got a relatively inexperienced and not great defensive coordinator. They've got a completely inexperienced offensive coordinator, a relatively inexperienced offensive coach. So yeah, in crunch time situations when intangibles matter, they're falling short. And it's because they're just not well coached. And I would argue the defense already poorly constructed, and so is just not meeting those expectations. Because there are some players that should be difference makers on that defense.
Yeah,
and
dude.
It's just not mattering.
Yeah, because like they gave a lot of money to Chandler Jones, like Max Crosby already being an incumbent piece, like like that front that applied a lot of pressure to the quarterback last year just really has not been the same. And like the secondary, like it was going to be a work in progress, because as we talked about a little bit before, some of those early round picks no longer being with the team, even coming into this year, let alone without the departure of Jonathan Abram at safety. I don't know.
This team has 10 total sacks. I think Nick Bosa has 10 total sacks.
Yeah, dude.
And we talk about Max Crosby. Max Crosby has been the one lone bright spot. He has 7 of those sacks.
Yeah.
They do not successfully pressure the quarterback, and it turns into giving up points in key situations. So we just really shouldn't be that surprised that this team is that bad. Granted, it is a bit hindsight is 2020. We thought that the talent would win out. And I don't think anyone really bothered to delve too deep into the inexperience of the coaching staff behind McDaniels. I think we delved a little bit into McDaniels' own inexperience.
Yeah.
But I don't think we took the full step beyond that. So it's a little unfair to just go we all should have we all also kind of missed. But in retrospect, we all really should have known. The signs have all been there.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously not a ton of fantasy, for this part of my topic, but it's sometimes football talk is a big part of what we do in fantasy football anyway. Because if you can't look at the football side of it, then it's important to have these skills. But
I mean, I do think it is fantasy relevant though, because you got to now look. You got half a season left, or can you rely on any of these guys? And I think outside of Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, the answer is kind of no.
Foster Moreau only because of positional scarcity.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah. So
and then I think Matt Collins if you're in a deep league. But then rely, I think, is a strong word for either of those two guys.
For sure.
I think they're playable, but I don't think they're reliable. Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, I'm playing them every week. And if they give me a dud, I just go, them's the breaks.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of bring it, more, to the fantasy side of things, we're not going to discuss this nearly as long as we discuss the Raiders thing, but just to kind of update on, the clowning that we gave the Colts last week. This is a segment.
I stand by it, by the way. We will
get
to that after this, but yes. I stand by it 100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is a game that I've made up on the spot called Really or Nah Fam. So now that we know that it seems like Saturday kind of wants Matt Ryan to, be under center. Let's just operate under the assumption that this continues to happen. So that performance that we saw from Jonathan Taylor on Sunday finished as the RB1 in week 10. It's been a struggle for him as of late, but can we okay. The question is are we expecting him to be able to do that moving forward? Really? Yeah. Or not, fam?
Closer to really, yeah, than nah, fam. I think they are going to lean into feeding him the rock. I think that it, A, has worked for this team. I feel that, B, someone like Jeff Saturday on his couch tweeting out the Raiders are bad is going to look at that team and just go, oh, they should really just feed Jonathan Taylor the ball. And he's kind of an O-line minded guy. So he's going to be we're going to have a stout O-line. We're going to run it up their gut. We're going to do the thing. So they got some tough matchups. And by the way, next week, we're just going to get to it now. That team is going to get crushed by the Philadelphia Eagles. And all of a sudden, everyone's takes about Jeff Saturday are going to look right. It's fine. But against matchups like the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe, you could probably run on them a bit. Los Angeles Chargers, week 16, it would not shock me at all if Jonathan Taylor has some big games left in him this season.
Yeah.
But because it's not an amazing team, if he comes up a little short one week, I'm not going to be shocked. I think the thing that's really happening is he's going to continue to get a ton of volume. I think that we will see.
I'm definitely with that for sure. It's about time that draft pick really started to pay off for people. And it was really through no fault of his own or anything, but just it's one of the unfortunate things about fantasy football sometimes. And then,
we talked about it. He lost some explosiveness potentially with the injury he had been dealing with. And so looks pretty good last week, TBD on that, but we had talked about it. His broken tackle numbers had gone down.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then a couple more.
Let's go.
Michael Pittman, now that he showed he could be, pretty solid again, with that performance, you can trust him again in your lineup. Really or not, fam?
Lean in, not fam? Leaning off fam. Like,
I get that, but like Ryan's back. You know, it was better with him.
So yes, they are better with Matt Ryan because Matt Ryan is a better quarterback. Matt Ryan is a better quarterback than Sam Ehlinger. He just is. And he's a much less mobile quarterback than Sam Ehlinger. So do I expect Pittman to be better than like the last couple of weeks under Reich were? Like, sure. But do I expect this team to be amazing and therefore for him to like be back? I would say not, fam. You're still probably going to have to play Michael Pittman in the flex. I don't know how many better options you're going to have, but I'm not going to feel good about it.
Yeah, all right, I can get down with that for sure.
Like, honestly, if I could avoid playing Michael Pittman this week, I would. They get the Eagles. Like, I would avoid that.
No, I mean, honestly, dude, like in our home league, especially like with, you know, how much I really, really need to win now, like I'm really trying to keep Pittman on the bench if I can,
like,
at least next week. Like,
I think there's a lot of people that have been talking about Paris Campbell, which you can stop me if this is what's coming up.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, Paris Campbell, again, he's someone that like Matt Ryan may raise the tide overall on him, but like I wouldn't play him next week either. Again, this Eagles, like the Eagles lost to the Commanders last week. Taylor Heineke was awful.
Yeah, I mean,
like they just ran the ball down the Eagles' throat to a degree, and the defense looked good. Like I would kind of avoid anyone not named Jonathan Taylor next week. And then going forward after that, like the Colts don't have the easiest schedule in the world. The Cowboys, the Vikings, the Giants, like, you know, Steelers aren't the toughest matchup, especially if they have injury issues.
Yeah, it's true.
Chargers, like, fits and spurts. But, like, that's a matchup that can be exploited. But, like, I'm not looking forward to week 13. And then week 14, luckily you won't have to worry about because they'll all be on bye. Week 15, like, there's going to be a serious run of your playoff run where you basically can't use anyone not named Jonathan Taylor.
All right. Yeah, just something that I did, you know, want to point out or whatever.
Yeah,
so
I totally get where you're coming from. I think that the offense production under Matt Ryan will be better than under Sam Ehlinger. I don't think that it will be better necessarily under Jeff Saturday compared to Frank Reich.
Yeah. No, I meant the thing that I was about to point out.
Go.
Because like, you know, just obviously, you know, jump the shark a little bit on the Paris Campbell thing, but just like my little fun nugget of, you know, and it's fine if your answer doesn't change, but just for the context for listeners.
I think I know what you're going to drop, and it is a fun nugget, but my answer probably won't change.
Fair. So last 3 games that Matt Ryan has started through week 6, 7, and this past week.
Yep.
All right. So like Paris Campbell, we are talking 11, 12, and 9 targets. Also in those same 3 games, 11.7 PPR points, 13 and 13.6. So now, mind you, there's also a touchdown in each of those games. So, like, you know, like we take away the touchdowns.
Did you say it was again? 6,
7, 10. Yeah.
And 10. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tennessee Titans, and the Las Vegas Raiders.
But it's still more about the fact that, like,
Matt Ryan definitely likes throwing the ball to him. That is like a completely valid point.
Yeah.
I think he's exploited some bad defenses. And again, like Matt Ryan, not like the worst quarterback as we've seen literally on this team.
Yeah. So it's like for me, it's just more about like, you know, like, are we going to expect like, because like to your point, like some of those matchups aren't going to be super easy. Is he going to score a touchdown every week? No. But when you have a guy that's getting, you know, 11, 12, and 9 targets from a quarterback that seems to really cling on to him, it's, you know, so okay.
I get why someone would like that.
So I promise, just last thing, just because you mentioned his name earlier, and then we will hand it over completely to you for your next thing. You kind of mentioned not really wanting to trust Matt Collins, not really wanting to trust Paris Campbell, but if you're picking one of the two, because I'm making you do it, who are you going with? I lean Paris Campbell in this regard. It's tough. I mean, like you know.
Can I caveat my answer a little?
Sure. Yeah. No, we make our own rules, you know.
So Hunter Renfrow is going to be out for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
During that time, I'd rather play Matt Collins.
Okay, all right. That's
Because
certainly
Matt
fair.
Collins will become the wide receiver 2 on that team. There's no Darren Waller. There is no Hunter Renfrow. As we've already mentioned, the offense, not that bad. And the Broncos, not a great matchup. But then the Seahawks, the Chargers, and the Rams, like, I can live with that. I can live with those 3 in a row. So I think for me, like, you know, do I love then week 15 through 18? Patriots, Steelers, Niners, and Chiefs? Not the most.
Yeah.
You know, but I think while Hunter Renfrow is out, I'd rather play Matt Collins. I think once either Hunter Renfrow or Darren Waller comes back, but particularly Hunter Renfrow, I'd probably lean Paris Campbell.
Yeah. So, you know, like by the time you're hearing this, your waivers have already run in your league probably, but you know, like there's a decent chance both of these guys might still be available for you. You know, just have this conversation.
The other thing I will say is I think I'd rather prioritize Matt Collins if the 2 are available, in no small part due to that week 14 bye week. And I don't see like I don't particularly see like a killer matchup to exploit where it's like, well, I'm going to grab Campbell. I'm going to use him to win this one game. And then, yeah, I have to cut him maybe in week 14, but that is what it is.
All right, yeah, fair enough. All right, I can definitely get down with that. Thank you for indulging me with this unnecessarily long topic because I realize how long it took to discuss that.
I'm down to both simultaneously trash Josh McDaniels and trash Jeff Saturday. It's a pretty solid Tuesday night, if you ask me at that point. Well, you wanted to play a game, so now I want to play a game.
Yes,
Breakout or Blip. And so let's start with the running backs. Brian Robinson finished RB15 in PPR scoring. Breakout or Blip?
Does Taylor Heineke retain the starting job for the Washington Commanders?
Rest of season.
Like that's kind of like, but like honestly, like that's where I'm so hung up about this because
Taylor
it's like,
Heineke will be the starter the rest of the season, and you can use that if you want for this scenario. But I'm telling you right now, that is what will happen in real life.
Yeah, and I'm kind of expecting that too. So by virtue of that, I would not say like 26 carries is a blip probably, but like in terms of the run heavy trend of the offense with Heineke under center, I don't think that that's necessarily going to go away. What we have seen this team do when he's under center is, take the ball out of his hands a little bit more often, lean back on a run. Because, I mean, that's just what you do with, quarterbacks that don't have like a flashy skill set. And like, it's proven effective for this offense. So as long as Heineke's doing that, and like you said, like I think he's probably going to be out there for the rest of it too. Like, yeah, I believe in it. The thing that kind of bothers me is what happens with Antonio Gibson during this time necessarily. How do they split it moving forward? Because he did kind of get a little banged up in that game against the Eagles. So it's like assuming full health for both, it kind of complicates the floor and ceiling for either one of them. But like I could dig the Brian Robinson vibes.
All right. I'm inclined to go Breakout adjacent. Like, is he going to be like a top 24 running back going forward? I'm not so sure. Is he going to be like playable in your flex going forward? Yeah, probably. And so that's kind of where I'm at. By the way, remember like at the beginning of the season when they were like Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams 2.0, Gibson or Robinson.
Yeah.
Right now, Antonio Gibson is 103 rushing attempts and Brian Robinson is 93. Admittedly, missed 4 games due to a minor flesh wound. But it is kind of amazing that they've basically done exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, like, hey, like I said, sometimes coach speak is coach speak, but sometimes they're telling you what they want to do. It's not always bullshit.
So I think for me, the biggest things with Robinson, he's got one thing that works in his favor and against him, and then one thing that works against him.
All
so
right.
The one thing that works in his favor and against him is his yards per attempt are not amazing. While that is not an end-all be-all metric, it does, like if you're running 3.3 yards per attempt, nobody's going to be like, oh, but really he's killing it. Like people are going to go, you're an inefficient runner. Antonio Gibson, 3.6. So not much better. So I don't think there's anything particularly in the running game that is like screaming, you must make sure player X or player Y gets the ball.
Fair.
4 targets for Brian Robinson, 41 targets for Antonio Gibson, though. That is a problem. And it is PPR. So for me, that's why I'm like breakout-ish. Like, I don't think he's going to be like a basement. I don't think he's going to like crash back to earth. But like, if he puts up like an RB36 game in between like an RB24 and an RB12, like it's not going to like shock me.
For sure. Yeah. And I will just, say very quickly on Robinson, like coming in as a prospect, I was not like, over the moon about him, and I don't know how efficient.
I was bullish on him and I wasn't even over the moon on him.
Yeah. But like I see the refrain on Twitter all the time, just being like, "Wow, it's like he looks so bad." Blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, like look, did I ever think he'd be a superstar? No, but like you try getting shot in the leg and coming back a month later to play a contact sport. Okay,
he also like he looks fine. He doesn't look amazing. He doesn't look like the next guy we're about to talk about did last week. Looks fine.
Yeah, like
and.
I don't know how much better he's ever going to get, but like we have to understand the man was shot.
He could be like. He could be like Mike Davis, but not so good at catching the ball.
I could see it.
Yeah.
Like respectable.
Yeah.
But not,
like, fine.
Yeah.
But unless he's going to get like insane volume, and I think like Mike Davis recently, he just hasn't had the stamina for it, whereas like Brian Robinson hopefully will for a couple of years. Then maybe he does something with it. But one guy who definitely did something with his insane volume was Rachaad White, who finished RB25 in PPR scoring. Now, granted, RB25, not what we typically think of as a breakout game, but when you run for over 100 yards, I'm calling it a breakout game. So, Rachaad White, breakout or blip?
I am absolutely just here for all of this, definitely calling it a breakout, and I am stalling because my computer is very slow, but like, dude, look, this guy, absolutely incredible human being, first and foremost. I had the distinct pleasure of being able to meet him and talk to him over the course of, the off season. Oh, here we go. Yep. There it is. Okay. All right. Time to share the screen. Cause this is, it's like, I don't get to flex all the time, man. Like these are just important things for me to be able to do periodically, and I'm gonna do it. So, let's go, folks, doing the thing. Yeah, dude. Yeah, there it is. Pretty good. So it's like, look, Rachaad White, I am personally invested in watching this man do his thing. So, like, shout out, him taking the time to be part of the Hayden Hurst Mental Health Podathon, like just even beyond the football field, like his willingness to be open and vulnerable about that means a lot to me personally. But then bringing it just, back to, the football stuff, because, I always like to just, talk about that because he's so nice. He's so nice. Entering week 10, from weeks 4 through 9, he was the RB 34 overall in PPR scoring. Not so much because he had heavy involvement running the ball, but as we talk about a lot with these Tom Brady offenses over the last few years, dumping off to the running back is a huge thing. And White had already really secured a healthy enough role to at least be somewhat of a flex option for you. And I saw, a report from, it's a Greg Allman or Alman. I don't remember how to pronounce his name, but he's a beat reporter for The Athletic that covers the Buccaneers. He's thinking that this isn't going to go away. He thinks that the team really wants to keep Rachaad White heavily involved, which is why he was my number 1 recommended player in my waiver article that dropped. So, like, I hope you all, because first of all, he'd been in the article multiple times already this season, so he should have been on your bench the whole time. But, like, I hope people cashed in on that, because even if it was kind of in relief for, for the, hip pointer in the fourth quarter, like, he got over 100 yards, man. Like, that's not nothing, dude. Like, Rachaad White is talented. His skill set fits what the Buccaneers offense wants to do, and we've kind of been waiting for it the whole time anyway.
Are you ready for me to rain on your parade?
Damn it. All right, fine.
Going blip. But not a massive blip. So I don't think he has this type of game again. I think there's a couple things going on. Fournette did pick up the hip pointer injury. He's going to have a full week to recover, and he'll be good to go by week 12. Tom Brady likes his vets. And so I think they will be inclined to keep Fournette active in that offense. Now, the things going for White are he did do a really good job, and he is talented. I think we might have found Rojo. And I mean that as a compliment. Remember when Rojo was doing a lot of the running and not a lot of the catching, which is weird because we expect Rachaad White to be a pass catcher. But Rachaad White had 0 targets last week.
That is
not
true.
A 1. And so I think Rachaad White may, in fact, get a committee role in this offense where he kind of runs the ball a fair amount. But he doesn't really get the targets and he doesn't really get the end zone work. And so I think ultimately he'll be nothing more than like if you were a 0 RB guy and you're using him as an RB2 or as a flex. But I think there is potential there. I do think Leonard Fournette is still the running back you want in this offense, though. Because the other dirty little secret is like, Rachaad White's efficiency was a bit better. He did bust out a nice 29-yard run.
Mm-hmm.
Leonard Fournette still went 57 yards and a touchdown on 14 rushing attempts.
And
he had nothing to lose the game.
And
had nothing to lose the job.
And had it not been for Tom Brady slipping, he would have had a really nice throw too. Like that trick that trick play was pretty cool, man. It was a good throw. So yeah, and I think it's interesting that you bring that up because it makes sense. They could easily cast Rachaad White in that role, but like I was encouraged by his skill set as a receiver, but I always thought of him more as a capable receiver versus like a natural receiver. Because
it could be a case of like this is the better version of Rojo, where like Rojo really couldn't catch the ball out of the backfield, but they still wanted to throw to him occasionally to keep like defenses honest. Yeah, like Rachaad White can actually catch the ball.
Yeah. And like the other part of it is like on top of that is the fact that like for as much credit as he got for being in, at least again in my eyes, because whenever I'm evaluating running backs, I put them into those two categories, capable and natural, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. More of them end up incapable than they do natural. But like he ran fairly well between the tackles in college. You know what I mean? Like this idea, like, yes, like was the pass catching a facet of his game that would be interesting for us as fantasy players? Yes. But like it does kind of get lost how just genuinely good of a runner he is too. So like from that standpoint, like I'd be really interested to see it if they do that. I think it would be very successful for them.
Okay. Well, let's move on then to our final running back. Isiah Pacheco finished RB38, but had 16 rushing attempts for 82 yards. So I think he belongs in this conversation. So breakout or blip?
There is a breakout running back on this team, but you named the wrong one. So I'm going to go ahead and say...
Okay, so this is a Jerick McKinnon podcast now.
This is a Jerick McKinnon podcast. So, like, look, blip from the standpoint that there have already been Pacheco blips, where there have been games where he is the mop-up duty guy that comes in, takes over the work, does whatever, blah. Like, he's had games of, like, higher carry totals, and it's just like, oh, maybe they're going to turn it over to him now, huh? And it just doesn't work out. So, like, I recommended both in the waiver column because it's like, okay, well, if you want to take, kind of a sneaky shot on Pacheco, like, I encourage you to do it. But, like, I can't suggest that there's going to be anything reliable coming from him, regardless of what happens with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and his 4 snaps against the Jaguars. But, like, McKinnon hadn't finished outside the top 40 at running back since week 4 against those Buccaneers we just finished talking about, and is now coming off of 2 back-to-back games of 6 receptions. Like, regardless of like what may or may not come of Pacheco's role, because frankly, even though it was weird for Edwards-Helaire in that game against the Jaguars, they would be the ones kind of dueling it out for that role in that offense. Whereas McKinnon is just the standalone, piece in like...
Is McKinnon just J.D. McKissick?
That's kind of what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? Like, it's Pacheco.
I think you're right.
Yeah, like Pacheco still has an Edwards-Helaire problem theoretically, whereas McKinnon has elevated himself to a point of, all right, you guys go do that. Let me just go do my thing in open space while you figure out this other bullshit. So, like the takeaway from all of this has really been way more McKinnon for me than Pacheco. So, like, I can't give him the breakout tag.
who was the running back from Jarrett Patterson?
Yeah.
I think Pacheco, like McKinnon is. If McKinnon is McKissick, I think Pacheco is kind of like Patterson, where it's like, yeah, if you give him enough volume, he could have a pretty good game because he can run the ball well enough. But I agree. I think it's a blip. I think he may get similar volume games in terms of rushing. I think they will continue to lean on McKinnon in the passing game. I think it's pretty telling that when Edwards-Helaire was there, he got targeted and they didn't target Pacheco once. So
Yeah, dude.
I'm with you. I do think it's a blip. And even if I'm wrong, I don't think you'll be able to trust him.
To back up the thing that I said so that I'm not just spouting erroneous shit. Week 12. Wow. Okay. I flipped that. Week 1, 12 carries for Pacheco.
Week 12 would be impressive for Pacheco at this point.
That's very true. I'm in the future, baby. See, there you go. See, I got the crystal ball now. So like 12 carries in week 1 for him. And then 2, 3. Oh, there we go. 11 carries against Tampa Bay in week 4. Then it's 1, 2, 8 against San Francisco. Okay, back down to 5. Oh, and then 16 against Jacksonville. Like,
so
these are blips.
It isn't a blip. This is just what to expect from him. He gets these odd, heavy volume games, but it's mostly unproductive touches.
And good luck figuring out when they're going to happen.
All right. Well, in that case, let's move on to the wide receivers. I got 4 for you here. We'll go through them like a little quicker. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Now, he's technically, I think, already broken out in the past, but I don't think quite like this. Finished wide receiver 5 in PPR this past week. Breakout or blip?
We've seen him in flashes, not only this year, but also like a little bit last year. But just based off of how this offense functions.
For reference, last year, week 11 versus Houston, he was the wide receiver 18 in PPR, 7 receptions, 8 targets, 107 yards.
Yeah, like he's a talented cat. Like I will give him that. But, like even like I think it was either last episode or the episode before, like I talked about that, kind of like subtle jab from Mike Vrabel after that Chiefs loss. Talking about, the whole Malik Willis not really passing thing. It's just like, who are they really going to throw to, man? Like, in a post-AJ Brown world, I'm not going to be enthusiastic about any wide receiver for the Titans, like, at least until maybe someday we see, Treylon Burks get healthy and reacclimate himself. But, like, that's the one short-term and I guess longer-ish term that I would be focusing on. Probably not Westbrook-Ikhine, and it's really no offense to him. It's just how the offense functions. It doesn't lend itself well to the receivers.
I would agree. I'm going blip as well. And I think one thing that's like kind of telling, like Robert Woods still got 7 targets. Mm-hmm. It's not like Ikhine was necessarily the first target in this offense. And when you look at the season-long stats, Treylon Burks started 2 games, played only 5, has 1 less target than Westbrook-Ikhine has through the entire season. So I'm with you. I think it's a blip. Now, I'm more curious what you think about this guy who finished even higher. Christian Watson finished wide receiver 3 in PPR scoring. Breakout or blip?
That performance against the Cowboys that we saw from that we saw from Alan. That we saw from Christian Watson on. It was pretty good, But it's the type of player he is, man. Like all they did, so they elevated Alan Lazard to being the wide receiver 1, and then they just found a perfect replacement for the typical Packers wide receiver 2. Like this is what Aaron Rodgers has had in his second receiver over the last several years, man. Like all, joking, and, pretend Freudian slips aside, like he's the same thing, man. Like I'm interested in his dynasty value. I am not interested in his redraft value. And as long as he is still working on consistently getting his hands around a football and hauling it into his gut,
which he still struggled with.
Exactly. So it's like I've seen the perspective of like, oh well, there's a decent chance if this, the breakout came, folks. Here we go. Oh, he might have a chance of taking over Alan Lazard as a wide receiver one. Like bullshit. No, like he's a raw prospect. We've talked about that on this show all the time. About like, does he have the tools? Sure. But like and I understand, especially with rookie receivers, but like rookies in general, later in the season, those breakouts tend to happen just because they've acclimated themselves. They've adjusted somewhat to the level of play at the professional level. But like, he is not the archetype of player that I am just going to be like, all right, folks, there it is. All right. Yeah, we're done. Development is done. He is fully baked out of the oven. Like, I can't do it, man.
So
like,
I don't disagree with you. And I think the MVS comparison is apt, especially like his average depth of target this past week was 20.5 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he turned 4 of those into 107 yards, like, yeah, okay, that kind of tracks. Yeah. Like he was a deep threat. And we saw that from MVS before. And we saw similar struggles to hold on to the ball. And I think it's what capped his ceiling there. Now, I'm curious, though. Do you still think he is like a lottery ticket that you just have to buy and see what happens? Or, if possible, because I've seen both these guys out on waivers in a couple of my leagues. Kadarius Toney finished wide receiver 14 in PPR scoring. So I ask you 2 questions. Breakout or Blip? And Watson or Toney?
So as we've established, I'm pretty clear about where I'm at with Watson, but I'm on the flip side for Kadarius Toney. I think that's a breakout, and I would definitely prefer to have Kadarius Toney. Especially because, so we just got finished talking about what type of role that Christian Watson fills in the Green Bay Packers offense. Like, not only from just like an archetypal standpoint of the type of player he is, but also what they're asking him to do versus what Toney does from an archetypal standpoint and what the Chiefs are presumably going to ask him to do. Toney lends himself way better to being extremely impactful in his offense than Watson does in his. And there's a reason that the Chiefs went out and made this type of deal. I will caveat, the breakout portion of the question with, we'll see what happens with Juju Smith-Schuster, because like that concussion, is Juju going to hold Toney back, all the way? Probably not, but like, it'll certainly help matters if Juju
could a little.
Yeah. But like, at any rate, like, we talk about in fantasy football, we talk about all the time, like what analysts have as their process, and like peek behind the Herms curtain, which actually not really a peek. I think I explain it pretty well on this podcast and always have in the past. Like my whole big thing is like watching players, putting them into archetypal buckets, seeing what that archetype does in the offense that they belong to. Is this a good fit? Is this a bad fit for fantasy? How much opportunity can they have relative to other players? Blah, 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 blah. And then boom, that's how we get my analysis. That's what it boils down to for me. What Toney is good at and what he's asked to do for the Chiefs potentially is going to be more consistently productive and better than what Christian Watson is good at and asked to do in Green Bay.
I would agree. I still have some questions about Toney's overall ability to produce in this offense, just because it's so good at spreading the ball around to literally everyone. Yeah. I mean, like Marcus Valdes-Scantling got 4 targets. Juju got 4 targets before his concussion. So while Kadarius fits kind of a Tyreek Hill mold in this offense, I mean, they're giving him rushing plays, similar athleticism, though not identical. I still worry that Juju Smith-Schuster is probably going to ultimately be the wide receiver that Mahomes leans on when healthy. But yeah, I would say it may be a blip, but definitely Toney over Watson. I would agree.
Better lottery ticket for sure. Especially,
I would agree.
Like,
I would still, if only Watson is available and you got the ability to take him, I'd take the lottery ticket. But if it's the two of them, I would take Toney for sure.
Absolutely. 100%. So like that, I'm with you on that all the way.
Okay. Well, I got one more for you then. Guy, I traded you in our Dynasty League. Nico Collins finished wide receiver 19 in PPR scoring. Breakout or blip?
I would like to call it a
blip out.
Yeah, a blip out. Just because, like,
I get it.
He's struggled with injuries, but also like Cooks has fallen. So okay, Brandon Cooks, players' full names. Brandon Cooks has fallen so far out of favor that it's really become Nico Collins time down there in Houston. Like, at least as far as how my comfort goes for the remainder of this season, like, yeah, I'm definitely with it. Like, my more, kind of fascinating read on this situation is trying to figure out what this means for dynasty managers, because that's a whole other can of worms depending on what this franchise does moving forward. But at least as far as this year, like, look, like, because like I was asked today, like I commented on a thread. It was a poll from our friend Dave Kluge over at Football Guys talking about, like, which Rams receiver would you pick now that Cooper Kupp's out of the lineup. I responded with something kind of snarky, and then somebody replied and it was like, hey, so like, would you drop Brandon Cooks for Van Jefferson? And I was like, well, I mean, the way things are going, I mean, like, I wouldn't. I said I would consider it. I didn't say yes, but I said I would consider it. And the fact that I even considered it says, and the reason it's relevant, obviously, is because it says everything about, like, given the certain circumstances that we're talking about and, like, given certain trends, one of these trends is Nico Collins. Like, he's doing well.
Yes, I just think Van Jefferson isn't the right wide receiver. Like, if you told me Allen Robinson was available on waivers, like, I'd consider maybe dropping Brandon Cooks for Allen Robinson and seeing what that lottery ticket does. I think we've just seen what Van Jefferson does, and none of it is called being the wide receiver one in an offense.
My thinking was just like, because obviously the three options that people laid out, Robinson, Skowronek, and, Van Jefferson.
I'd weirdly rather have Skowronek than Jefferson.
I just felt like, from a player type standpoint, and like assuming they're going to ask somebody to, mop up not all of, but some of the Cooper Kupp duties, I like the Jefferson skill set to replace that better. But, and if I'm wrong, okay, well, I
always agree to disagree there. But I do like your point overall on Collins.
Yeah, like, that's why I agreed to do that trade, because I was just like, look, like, I sent you like decent compensation, but nothing that's going to kill me if it blows up. But also, like, if it does, like, we're both going to come out winners on this, because, like, I don't think he's ever going to become like a offensive player of the year candidate.
Correct. But I don't even know that he's necessarily going to survive regime change completely. I certainly don't think he suddenly elevates to being the wide receiver one in that team.
Yeah, and I always kind of felt that, just based off of the type of player that he is, I mean, he is your go up and get it X that, like, you don't love to build the function of your offense around it. Like, I kind of figured his cap would be a wide receiver too anyhow. So, but either way,
been like what the Lions were maybe hoping for from, like, DJ Chark this year.
Possible, So, like, yeah, it's interesting for sure, but also just wanted to quickly point it because it was kind of funny. Like, my answer to the poll was like, I think I said technically correct Van Jefferson. Actually correct answer, no one. There's your Rams advice, folks. None of them. Avoid this offense like the plague.
Yeah, I would say for me, technically correct Allen Robinson. Real answer, no one. I'm with you there. For Nico Collins, I'm personally going to go, it's not a blip that he's going to lead this team in targets, but the wide receiver 19 finish might be. So I'm not going full breakout yet, only because it is a bad offense.
For him to finish that high, like, it basically requires finding the end zone.
Yeah, like, he got 10 targets and still, like, almost fell out of wide receiver 2 territory.
Exactly.
Not amazing. Speaking of, like, not amazing, but guys we hope will do well, the bonus round. We're ending with the tightest of ends. This is the last part of the show before we do the plugs. Juwan Johnson or Foster Moreau. They were tight end 4 and tight end 5 respectively. Who do you want between the two of them? And has either broken out?
Cole Kmet. No, between the two of them, I have to go with Foster Moreau, because we don't know if Dennis Allen is finally going to grow a pair and move it back to Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
that's my biggest thing.
I sure hope he does, because that's my starting quarterback in Scott Fishbowl this week.
Yeah, like, look, like, I bring it up just because, like, it is super relevant, not only for Juwan Johnson, but, like, honestly, kind of just like for the other pieces of the Saints offense. Like, Kamara's been a little bit, at times. Chris Olave has been even more at times, and we would like both of those guys to be good, but like they're 2-5 with Dalton as the starter. I can't reliably count on anybody as long as they continue to trot out Dalton. Whereas like, Moreau, like it's not pretty, but kind of like I was saying earlier, it's like he's shown in the past he's pretty talented. I think if he was on a different team, not behind Darren Waller, we would consider him a streaming tight end every week anyway. So, I mean, like, I'm gonna roll with that.
So I'm going Foster Moreau as well. And I get that people are going to point to Juwan Johnson having finished the tight end 2 in week 7, tight end 8 in week 9, and tight end 4 last week in PPR and going like, how could you pass on this guy? And the answer is going to be a combination of Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill. And it's like, I like Juwan Johnson. I would like them to free Juwan Johnson. I actually think Juwan Johnson can be a more than serviceable tight end in the National Football League. Like, I think he can get it done, especially as a receiver.
Yeah. We saw it through like the first, 3 weeks of last year.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the first time we've had conversations about Juwan Johnson being good.
But I find his volume in terms of targets rarely translates into decent production, whereas Foster Moreau, I think he does a bit more with the volume that he gets. And Foster Moreau has not seen less than 4 targets in a game he's played this year. Juwan Johnson has had games with 1 target and 2 games with 2 targets. And to me, potential like that is a red flag.
Yeah.
Well, so I get the Juwan Johnson stands out there. I am actually with you in spirit. I just don't think it's going to be sustainable long term.
I feel that for sure. And it also glad to get tight end content on the show. Definitely
you gotta love it.
One of our favorite things to do. On top of our most important favorite thing to do on a weekly basis is help you, the listener and viewer, become maybe just a little bit smarter, maybe just a little bit better, and walk away with a piece of knowledge from the Lateral Show, a sideways look at fantasy football. If you want to follow me on the social medias, you can do so by finding me on Twitter at Herms NFL. If you want to find some of the other stuff that I do in my free time, I write a handful of articles on a weekly basis over on the fantasy6pack.net website, and including my waiver wire article that, if you want to, fantasy6pack.net/plans, get behind the paywall, read the whole thing. Like that's how you can do that. You get that, you get the DFS tools, award-winning rankings, all that, plenty more of the Discord community. I think, did I say that? Whatever. Not the point. Like, you could do all sorts of shit. And it's like pretty cool. And then I also, in my day job, I'm an associate NFL editor over at clutchpoints.com. So if you want to see some of my musings, oh, there we go. Yeah, very good. You can read some of my shit there. And that's pretty cool. And then much beyond that, I did. I don't know. I got the Capitals reverse retro jersey online today, but the Alexander Ovechkin sold out, so I just got a blank one. Damn it! But minor on my soapbox at the end of this before I turn it over to you. But I just had to say it because I'm sad. All right, so
if it makes you feel any better, last year when I got my reverse retro Alexander Ovechkin jersey, I basically panic bought it because I was worried if I kept looking for the TJ Oshie jersey that they were all going to sell out, and I just didn't want to not end up with one. So I feel you. I do.
Yeah. All right. So there we go. Thank God. All right. So now that I've got my bullshit out of the way, why don't you go ahead and tell people what you are up to with the things that you do on the internet?
Well, we got to make sure the bills get paid. So I do have one last plug that you need to make, I believe.
Right. That's true. Yeah. I've been really slacking on that lately. Not because I don't love Thrive Fantasy or anything, but, just like if you like playing DFS, but you're more in, kind of the prop pick realm, you can use promo code HERMS, 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So definitely do that. 100%. Hey.
All right. Well, as always, it is your boy McLateral, aka McLateral FF. You can find me on Twitter at McLateral FF or at Mac McMillan ATL, which is my main account. So, as always, drop the heat check every week. Got, of course, another one coming out this Saturday. I've just realized that you can see the entirety of the screens I'm looking at throughout the show on my glasses.
You just figured that out?
I didn't realize it was like that noticeable. Like I knew you could see some glare. Like I've always seen the ring light and stuff like that. I didn't realize that like if I zoom in enough, you could probably read our show sheet, which is kind of wild. Speaking of reading, you can also head over to Tom's Guide, which is where I do my day job, writing all about the latest in tech, entertainment, and gaming. Today was a lot of self-repair stuff for computers. Apple is coming out with a little bit of repair stuff. What was it? Oh, yeah. They are allowing same device repairs. You can go to a technician, get your device worked on there in front of you, sent home with you. Pretty cool if it pans out. And then Microsoft announced it's going to partner with a major US retailer. They did not feel inclined to share which one, to have a bunch of repair service stations, possibly just for their Surface devices, but possibly more. We'll see. But so those are pretty cool. And then, I've been messing around with some VR stuff. So wrote about a little PSVR 2 news today. And I'm looking right now at the Meta Quest 2 headset that I really need to break out some more. But yeah, so that's my day job. And then, of course, again, fantasy6pack.net, get those plans, check out Herms' stuff behind the paywall, and check out my stuff in front of it. It will not steer you wrong. And I think that's it. I think that's the show.
There it is. Let's get the air horn back on the loop one more time, baby.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Lateral Show. Fasten your seatbelts, because here